So the third major character in this text is William Lloyd Garrison. And William Lloyd Garrison, for those of you who aren't familiar with the history of the abolitionist movement, went on to become one of the most famous, if not the most famous, white male abolitionist in history. He was the founding editor of a periodical known as The Liberator. And he also was involved in the founding of many of the principal anti-slavery societies that really challenged slavery in the 1830s, 1840s, and 1850s. And so his section begins with a speech that he gave on Independence Day in 1829. And he gave this speech for the American Colonization Society. In the 1820s, the most prominent and powerful racial reform organization became the American Colonization Society, a society that was geared towards sending free black people back to Africa, and thereby sort of encouraging the sort of gradual abolition of slavery and then getting rid of those newly freed people and sending them back to Africa. It was quite interesting for black folk at the time who knew that they had been hauled here against their will on ships, and now the nation was talking about sending them back to Africa, right, on ships. But this very prominent sort of organization invited Garrison to speak at their annual fundraising event in Boston on Independence Day in 1829. And in this speech, Garrison, who's this young editor, he hadn't started in The Liberator yet, he's this young editor, and he says in this speech that I'm sick of our hypocritical cant about the rights of man. We should be demanding a gradual abolition of slavery, not promoting colonization. And then 10 days later, Garrison went to a black church in Boston and went to a celebration of England's abolition of the slave trade. So black people in Boston would annually sort of celebrate England's abolition of the slave trade. And at this event, a white clergyman addressed the crowd. And during his lecture, he advocated that emancipation right now was not wise or prudent, and that black people needed a long period of time qualifying them for freedom. Basically, black people were not ready for freedom. And so Garrison, when this speaker said this, he heard this murmur go through the crowd. You know how the crowd gets angry without saying so? He heard this murmur, right? And it caused him to think back about what he said in his speech 10 days earlier when he advocated this gradual abolition of slavery. And he thought about that as he walked home that night. And he thought about, was like immediate emancipation a wild vision? He described it as this wild vision in this speech. Or was it wilder to stand on some sort of middle ground between what he was calling sinful slavery and righteous freedom? And so he said, I have nothing left to stand on. And by August of 1829, Garrison had moved to Baltimore and became the co-editor of this prominent abolitionist periodical called The Genius of a Universal Emancipation. And then he wrote, no valid excuse can be given for the continuance of the evil of slavery a single hour. And he would then become the principal advocate of what became known as immediate emancipation. And I say this to sort of talk very briefly about, so over the next 30 years, they became this three-way debate about slavery and race in America with three positions. Garrison took the position of immediate emancipation. Others took the position of gradual emancipation. And then a third group took the position of permanent slavery. And these three positions were indicative of a larger racial debate over the course of American history on notions of equality or racial equality. And that larger debate that I'm referring to, that I chronicle throughout the history of Stanford from the beginning, a debate that even continues with the end of chattel slavery, had these three positions. One was permanent inequality. And this position stated that yes, there are all these racial inequalities and inequities in our society, and they are caused by black inferiority. And black inferiority is permanent. And so there's no way we can have anything other than racial inequities and equalities in our society. That's been one position over the course of American history. A second position has been gradual equality. And this position has stated that black people are inferior right now. And so, yes, even if we were to create equal opportunities, we would not have racial equality because black people right now are inferior. But we have the capacity to civilize and develop black people such that one day we will be able to create equality. This is the second position on race historically in America. And then the third position has been what I call immediate equality. And it is this position, the anti-racist position, that suggests that the racial groups are equal. And that no, even if we were to provide equal opportunities for black people, then we would be able to create racial equality because there's nothing wrong or inferior about black people. And that's really what Garrison spent the next 30 years promoting as related to slavery. We need to end slavery right now because black people are ready for freedom. Thank you.